Hello, I'm going to explain how we use the golden mean in astrology. We use the golden mean in two ways. One is golden mean aspects, and the other is golden mean midpoint structures. And in this video, I'm going to explain what golden mean aspects are and what golden mean midpoint structures are. I will also show you how we interpret golden mean aspects, and I will show some examples in people's birth charts. In the other 6 videos, we're going to concentrate on golden mean midpoint structures. But before we get going, let's first go over what a golden mean is. You're probably familiar with the golden mean. I've got a little diagram here just to make sure that we're all aware of what the golden mean is. What we do with the golden mean is we take some length. Let's say that this is 1 meter. And we divide that 1 meter into 0.618 and 0.382, because 0.618 plus 0.382 equals 1. So this light blue line is a more obvious balancing point. It's the halfway point, where we take half the length. We have 0.5 here and 0.5 here. But there's another balancing point where this red line is, which is 0.618 on one side and 0.382. And even though that at first that might seem more lopsided, because we haven't gone right in the middle, this division here by 0.618 and 0.382 has wonderful properties, and it shows up in nature in a lot of ways as well. So this is the golden mean. It's not exactly 0.618, approximately 0.618 and approximately 0.382. And so this value, 0.618, is the golden mean. In a way, 0.382 is also the golden mean. That's the other part of it. So these two numbers always go together. Now you'll also hear that the golden mean is 1.618. And the reason it's called 1.618 is that if I have a meter, something a length of 1 meter or 1 mile or 1 foot, whatever it is, let's call it 1 meter, and then I have another one that's 1.618 meters, that's also in the golden proportion. It's called golden proportion or golden mean or divine proportion. So 1 and 1.618 is a golden proportion, and so is 0.618 to 1. So that's the golden mean. You'll sometimes hear it called 0.618, and sometimes it's called 1.618, and that's why. It's just a matter of whether you're saying 0.618 to 1 is a golden ratio, and 1 to 1.618 is a golden ratio. Okay, so that's what the golden mean is. Sometimes I'll call it golden mean, sometimes I'll call it golden ratio. And as I mentioned, here's another way to look at it, 1 divided by 1.618 is 0.618. Also, if you take a golden mean of a golden mean, take 0.618 times 0.618, then you get 0.382. So going back to our little diagram here, if I take this larger part of the golden mean, multiply it by itself, I get the smaller part, the 0.382. And by the way, if you're thinking about 2 points, which is what we're going to be doing in astrology, we take these 2 points. Let's say we have a point here, X, and we have a point here, X. Suppose that this is the sun and this is the moon, in your astrology chart. Well, as I pointed out, let me pick a different color here. Let's take this purple. This point here is the golden mean, but so is the point here. So there are 2 golden mean points, right? Because this point here, let's draw it in orange. Well, something like that. You get the idea that from here to the orange is 0.618, and then this is 0.382. And for the red one, you have 0.618 on this side and 0.382 on this side. So it's kind of obvious, I just wanted to make this clear, that you have 2 golden mean midpoints. So between any 2 points, there are 2 golden mean midpoints. This is what we're going to call them in astrology. This light blue one is the midpoint. This is the midpoint. This point right here is the midpoint, halfway in between. These two other points are golden mean midpoints. So you have two golden mean midpoints. You have only one, well, should we call it normal? Our usual midpoint. There's only one, 0.5 from each. There are two golden mean midpoints. These is what we're going to call them, golden mean midpoints. So you're already getting an idea of what the golden mean midpoint is, and in a minute I'll explain to you what a golden mean aspect is. Okay, so back to our PowerPoint slides here. So I think you probably know the golden mean shows up in nature in lots of ways. There are many amazing properties of the golden mean. Entire books are written about it. There's a book by Mario Livio, Livio, on the golden mean. It's a fun book to read. There are some wonderful videos on YouTube by Dan Winter. He explains how among other things, he covers a lot of different ideas, but he explains how the DNA helix, our genetic code, that helix has proportions of the golden mean. So the golden mean is a big deal. It just shows up in so many ways, and we might think it would be important in astrology. So, as I mentioned, there are two ways we use the golden mean. One is aspects, one is midpoints. And let me tell you about aspects. The aspects, golden mean aspects, is a very simple idea. The idea is this. Here's a chart wheel. Happens to be of this fellow Theodore Landscheid, born in 1927, and Landscheid was one of the first people to propose that there are golden mean aspects. And what Landscheid suggested is, just as you look at a trine aspect, like in his chart, he has Jupiter over here at 12 Pisces trine Pluto at 13 Cancer. They're approximately 120 degrees apart, which is 1/3 of a circle. And a square aspect is 1/4. So Venus at 15 Aries is about 90 degrees from Pluto at 13 Cancer. So they're close enough to being 1/4 of a circle or a square. Well, Landscheid said, why don't we take 0.618 of the circle? And that angular distance should be important. So if we go to a calculator, I'm in the Sirius 2.0 software, and if I go to a calculator and I take the 360 degrees and I multiply it times 0.618, I get 222.48. That's bigger than 180. That's the long way around. In astrology, we often measure aspects by the short distance. So if I calculate 360 minus 222.48, I will get the shortest distance. So 360 minus 222.48 is 137.52. So in other words, two planets that are 137.5 degrees approximately apart are in a golden mean aspect. They are distributed in that golden mean relationship. And Landscheid went further than that. He said not only is 137.5 degrees important, but what if you take a golden mean of a golden mean? Let's go back to our calculator. So if I take 137.5 and multiply it times 0.618, I get 84.98 approximately, almost 85 degrees. And he felt a golden mean of a golden mean would be important. He also suggested that not only could you take the golden mean of the whole circle, but a golden mean of half a circle. So in other words, if I take the 180 times 0.618, I get 111.24 degrees. He felt that also has a golden mean quality. So, to summarize, Theodore Landscheid's idea is you take a golden mean of the whole circle. That's about 137.5 degrees. If two planets are 137.5 degrees apart, they have a very smooth, natural, perfectly balanced relationship to each other. And he felt that you could calculate golden mean aspects in other ways, such as a golden mean of a golden mean, or a golden mean of half, of 180 degrees, or a golden mean of 90 degrees. I'm not so sure about those additional golden mean. The one we would want to test first is the 137.5 degrees, and Theodore Landshut would agree with that. So the most obvious golden mean aspect is 137.5. Now, here's the wonderful thing. We now have software with tens of thousands of charts. What occurred to me is, let me look at Mars and Uranus, because I was thinking Mars and Uranus are in a golden mean relationship. You would have this beautiful dynamic release of power that would be great for athletics, or high energy of some kind. So with our research software that we have now, the Sirius software comes with about 20,000 charts with accurate birth data. What is it, 85,000 charts, something like that, total number of charts. We can go through, see who has Mars and Uranus in this aspect, and see if they are athletic. So I did the research, I'm going to show it to you, and guess what? They are. So we're getting confirmation of the theory. Okay, so let me show you a few things. One is, if you right-click on the chart wheel in the Kepler or Sirius software, you go to Customize, select the Aspects tab, you can click on Golden Means and get golden mean aspects. If I go to the Customize of this aspect set, I will see what they are. So these are the aspects that Theodore Landshut said are important. Here's the 137 degrees, 30 minutes, 28 seconds. Like I said, slightly more than 137.5. He also said you could take half of that, which is the 68 degrees, 45 minutes. Here's the one I did, the golden mean of the golden mean, 84 degrees, 59 minutes, 4 seconds. So these are all the aspects. I'm not going to go over this in great detail, because the only one that I've tested so far is the most obvious one, the 137 degrees, 30 minutes, 28 seconds. I have not done research yet on the others, so we don't know yet, but we have strong evidence that the most obvious golden mean aspect, 137 degrees, 30 minutes, 28 seconds, works. It's actually a valid aspect. It indicates a smooth, natural flow of energy between the two planets. We also found out it's not always necessarily good. The person just naturally flows with that energy. It's almost like your heart beating or breathing. It's so natural to the person that they almost take it for granted, but not always for good. They're so naturally that way that they may not relate to other people as well. You'll see what I mean as we look at this in more detail. Okay, but those are the golden mean aspects. You now know what golden mean aspects are, and to review, the most obvious one is this 137.5078, slightly more than 137.5 degrees. Excuse me. That's the one we researched, and the evidence is that it really works. It means something. It is actually important in the chart. And just to mention this, 137.5 degrees shows up in nature. Here's a quote from a professor at website uic.edu. He says the botanical elements like florets, scales, and bracts are laid down at successive increments of an angle of 137.5 degrees during the growth of the plant. So some plants distribute their growth in this 137.5 degree angle. So it's fascinating mathematically. It's like a fractal kind of angle that you take golden means of golden means, you get more golden means, and it shows up in nature. And by the way, the golden mean is also closely related to the Fibonacci numbers. For example, the ratio of two consecutive Fibonacci numbers approaches the golden mean. So sometimes when you're reading about or studying Fibonacci numbers, you're also brought into this world of the golden mean because they're closely connected. Okay. Now, here's the results of the research. What I did is I went into the research feature in the Sirius 2.0 software. You can also do this in Kepler. and I selected the astro signature, and I just created a golden mean aspect. Very, very simple. I'm going into the customize to show it to you, and I selected Mars and Uranus aspect 137 degrees, 30 minutes, 28 seconds. And I did a 1 degree orb, but what I'm really interested in is the people that have this aspect almost exact. I gave it 10 points, which means if you have this aspect in your chart almost exact, you'll get the full 10 points. If it has half of the allowable orb, you'll get only 5 points. So you get more and more points the more exact it is. And when I ran this on the approximately 20,000 charts with AA data, which in the research you select here, you just click on accuracy and say you want AA data, and then you click on begin analysis. You can select a group, particular category of charts, let it run. When it's done, it will list them. And here are the results. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people who have the aspect very exact and got all 10 points. And out of the 9 people, 4 of them are athletes. 2 are track and field athletes. This one here, track and field athlete. And this one here, track and field athlete. You can see their names. I'm going to just go through this quickly. Another one is a swimming champion, this fellow here. And another is a soccer player. And after he retired, he became a soccer manager, or what most of the world calls football. Here in America, we call it soccer. 4 out of the 9 people being athletes is impressive. Usually in this research, we don't get anywhere near that many athletes. And the sports are somewhat similar kinds of sports. Now, another one of the 9 people is Larry Ely. I'm not even sure how to pronounce Larry's last name. I know Larry. We communicate reasonably often. He's an astrologer. He has a lot of technical expertise. He graduated from Princeton. And I contacted Larry and I said, have you ever been involved in track and field or swimming? And I was amazed. He said yes, he was on the track team in high school and at Princeton. And if any of you are athletes, you know how good you have to be to make it on the team at a college level. You have to be really, really good. And he was also swimming, and he's very well coordinated. And I had no idea, because every time I'm communicating with Larry, it's all about astrology and metaphysics, and astrology and metaphysics, and astrology and metaphysics. He never has ever mentioned anything about athletics. So that really impressed me. Now, the other people, the child actress died at age 12. We don't have any particular evidence about that. This is a fellow who was a business representative. He died in the 9/11 airline crash. What's said about him is that he was an upbeat, youthful kind of sort of person, and that's what we find with Mars Uranus. Larry seems to be eternally young. The guy doesn't seem to age. So this Mars Uranus in the golden mean aspect gives a vibrancy, a vitality, excellent coordination, a spark, a bounce, and the person can take it for granted. It may not be that important. They can use it and become great athletes. It's just something they have natural to themselves. Now, one of these people is a novelist. I have no idea about whether he was also athletic. And one is Crystal Gale. She's a well-known country singer, celebrity level country singer. As far as I know, she was never athletic. She does appear to be pretty vital, energetic. I don't know. But very often what we've seen with the golden mean is that the person takes it for granted. They're going to have this bouncy, lively energy. They may utilize it in something like athletics, and sometimes they don't. They don't use it directly. So overall, the results confirm what we expect. When you get over half the people clearly having exceptional athletic ability, and that would include Larry as well, that's 5 out of 9 clearly having that kind of capability. We don't usually get that in our research. Maybe get 1 or 2 athletes out of 9 or 10 charts. So very interesting and fairly good support for our theory. So we're getting an idea of how the golden mean is used in astrology and how it is interpreted. Okay, and let me emphasize, this is exploratory research. I'm not trying to make some great convincing argument that golden mean aspects are important. We're just exploring it using research tools, and it looks very promising. What we've done more research on and gone into more depth with is golden mean midpoint structures. And a golden mean midpoint structure is very simple. I'll show you an example in this fellow. His name is Colin Wardrop. He died of a drug overdose. We got his birth data from a book called A Multitude of Lives by Paul Wright, and his data appears on page 103 of that book. In Colin Wardrop's birth chart, Saturn is opposite Uranus with a 3-degree orb. So there's Saturn at 4 Pisces, Uranus at 7 Virgo, and Neptune is exactly at the golden mean. Remember, there are two golden mean midpoints. There would be a golden mean midpoint 0.618 from Saturn, and another one 0.618 from Uranus over here. So Neptune is at one of those golden mean midpoints, and the orb is 0. It's exactly there. I found this interesting because in my astrological work, I associate Saturn, Uranus, Neptune with unusual states of consciousness, like a disrupted state of consciousness. It can be psychic, it can be delusional, a disrupted state of consciousness, and he dies of a drug overdose. He obviously enjoyed disturbed states of consciousness, you might say. And what we find with the golden mean is it's not always good. It's just natural. So with the Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, the person doesn't distinguish their thoughts and feelings from their actions as much as other people do. They'll act out their fantasies more. If their fantasies are good, the results are good. If their fantasies are bad, the results are bad. And to be in a drugged state is natural to this pattern. They're already in a kind of drugged state, and the drug just increases their tendency to be divorced from the normal kind of sense of solid reality that most people have. Now, what's really fascinating in this fellow's chart is not only does he have the Saturn, Uranus, Neptune exact, but Moon is in between Uranus and Neptune at a golden mean midpoint, and the orb also almost exact. So we have 4 planets tied together in a pattern, and this is what we're going to be looking at a lot in the next videos, is these 4 planet patterns with golden means are very, very, very powerful. And what this means is he enjoys being in an altered state of consciousness to the point where he dies of a drug overdose. He has another golden mean midpoint structure, much weaker, of the Uranus at Jupiter, Neptune. I drew that in a lighter red, but these strong red lines just to show Neptune at the golden mean point between Uranus and Saturn, and Moon at a golden mean point between Uranus and Neptune. Fascinating. We are going to see a lot of people who are involved in crime have very similar patterns. Crime, drug use, psychic ability. The people with these golden mean midpoint structures of Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune with another planet are in a kind of, you might say, altered or disturbed or different sensitivity from other people. They don't act normal. They're not in a grounded reality like other people, and you get various kinds of unusual results. If we don't have golden mean midpoint structures, we won't see any of this. But we'll see the theme repeated over and over again. Now, one other thing I want to mention in this video is, well, 2 other things. One is near midpoints and far midpoints. And let me explain what that is. I mentioned that there are 2 midpoints. Let me go back to Colin Wardrop. I mentioned, for example, between Saturn and Uranus, we have this Neptune midpoint here, and another midpoint between Saturn and Uranus would be somewhere around here, probably in early Sagittarius or so, I'm not sure, but it'd be 0.618 from Uranus and 0.382 from Saturn. Now, you can also have far midpoints where you go the long distance. Let's take Uranus and Neptune, be maybe more obvious since they're not near opposition. The moon is at one of the golden mean midpoints. It looks like this house cusp might be close, I don't know. Somewhere around here would be the other golden mean midpoint, but you could also find golden mean midpoints going the long distance. So maybe Saturn is near the, well, it isn't. Let me not use that, but somewhere over here, probably in, let's see, probably over here near the midheaven up here around late Pisces or Aries is probably a golden mean far midpoint. So you go 0.618 the long distance. So one of them would be over here around late Pisces Aries, and the other one somewhere over here, if I go 0.618, maybe near Jupiter. So somewhere in this area, maybe mid-Taurus. So you get the idea that there are two near midpoints, two far midpoints. Now right now, I don't know if the far midpoints are important. We're convinced, I'm convinced, and other people researching this, we are convinced that the near midpoints are important. Bottom line, there are two golden mean midpoints for every pair of planets, and if there's another planet at that point, the person flows into that type of energy very easily and very naturally, and it seems normal to them. So people with these Mars-Uranus types of things, they just naturally have a lot of dynamic energy. People with a Moon, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune pattern of golden mean midpoints, like this fellow Colin Wardrop, he just naturally flows into what other people might consider to be like a kind of altered or disturbed sensitivity, extremely sensitive and out of the normal realm of things, and he just lives that way. It's normal to him. That's the way he functions. And inclines to to drug use, criminal activity, psychic ability, some kind of extraordinary sensitivity with behavior that expresses that. Okay, so we are learning about how the golden mean is used. To review, we have golden mean aspects, we have golden mean midpoint structures. With golden mean midpoint structures, we have an interesting thing that happens where four planets can combine together to make two golden mean midpoint structures, as happens in this chart. We've also learned that there are two near golden mean midpoints for every pair of planets. So for Uranus and Neptune, the moon is at one of them, but there's another one somewhere over here, another golden mean midpoint. And there are far golden mean midpoints. There are two of those as well. I haven't researched those as carefully. I'm not sure if they are important or not. But the near golden mean midpoints are. Now, last thing, and we're done with this video, is what kind of orbs do we use? I started off saying I'm going to use a 1 degree orb. But then I noticed something weird when using a 1 degree orb. I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. Which is this. This fellow has Mars at 20 Gemini 04 and Venus at 20 Gemini 45. They're both in the same degree and they're less than a degree apart. Now what if he doesn't? But what if he also had a planet right at 20 Gemini 00? And I'm using a 1 degree orb. Then this planet that's not even between Venus and Mars, it would be not in between them. It would be before Mars, would be considered to be at the midpoint because it would be within a degree. So you could have a planet at the golden mean midpoint that's not even between the two planets. You see the problem? Let me repeat that again. Venus and Mars are very close together. I could have another planet at 20 Gemini 00, for example, or at 21 Gemini 00. It would not even be in between them, but it would be within the 1 degree orb of a golden mean midpoint. It seems to go against the idea of being at this balance point. So one possibility is that instead of having an orb like 1 degree or half a degree, we want the planet to be within, for example, 1% of the distance between the planets, so that it's falling very, very close to that special point. And in our research, we're getting evidence that that's true. So we use a proportionate orb. Instead of having a fixed orb, where all golden mean midpoint structures get, say, a 1 degree orb, they get an orb of 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever percent you want to use of the distance between the planets. This means if the planets are far apart, like Saturn and Uranus, there's a bigger orb. And if the planets are very close together, like Venus and Mars, it would have to be almost to the minute right at that point. So it's relatively exactly at the balancing point. We want the planet at the balancing point. So there's two ways to have orbs, and our research so far suggests that the proportionate orbs work better. And let me show you how you select this in the Sirius software. This feature is available in Sirius. It's not available in Kepler. If I go to Midpoints and I go to View Change Settings, the second menu item, and I go to Advanced Settings, here's where you select your golden ratio midpoint structures. And you have an option for far midpoints. And I'm not sure if these work or not yet. So you might want to just uncheck it to focus just on the near ones. And here you select whether you want a proportion of angle or same for all. And what I'm suggesting is, I believe at this point, proportion of angle and only 1%, just a 1 here, is a good orb. It has to be almost exactly right at that golden mean point. So you get the idea? You can select golden ratio midpoint structures. You have an option to include far midpoint structures. And you can use the kind of orb we're used to, where you just have an orb, like a 2 degree orb. This would be the orb if same for all is selected. Or this new idea of proportion, and our evidence is that you want proportion. So in order to do this, you have to have software that allows you to select golden ratio midpoint structures and allows you to select an orb that's a proportion of an angle. So these features are in the Sirius software, and that's what you select to get it. Now let me show you one more thing. If I include the far midpoint structures, I click OK, and I click OK, this is what the midpoint structures look like. Maybe I should stretch this out a little more. I think it'll make those a little bigger. That should help a little bit to read it. This thing that looks like a circle means the 0.618 golden mean point. This one that has an X so it looks more like a wheel is the 0.382. And if there's a little vertical line like this one, it means it's a far midpoint. So you have 4 kinds of golden mean. If it has the little vertical bar, it means it's a far midpoint. Here's another far midpoint. If I right click, go to Advanced Settings, uncheck the far midpoints, so I'm not going to have far midpoints, and this is going to disappear. The Pluto at Venus Saturn, gone, because now I'm only getting the near midpoints. And this, smaller this number, this means 0.1, means I'm within 10% of that 1% of orb. So if this gets to 0, it means it's exact. Okay, so the way you get golden mean midpoint structures is you select them. For now, I suggest don't select far midpoints unless your research or research of other astrologers shows that they do work. But for now, I'm not using them yet. I'm using just the near midpoints, and you'll see either the thing that looks like a kind of like a wheel, like spokes on a wheel, or a circle. And let's pull up a pop-up wheel just to confirm what I'm talking about here. If I pull up a pop-up wheel, this moon at Jupiter Neptune, here's Jupiter, here's Neptune, it's the long distance. It's 0.618. And that's why it's a wheel. Whereas moon at Mars Pluto here's Pluto, here's Mars, it's closer to the first planet. So the wheel means it's 0.382 from the first planet in the zodiac, and the one that looks like a circle, this moon at Jupiter Neptune, means it's farther from the first planet in the zodiac and closer to the second one. So we're distinguishing the two different midpoints, golden mean midpoints. Now, for me right now, I don't know if there's any difference in meaning. I think they have the same meaning, so I don't really care whether it's the wheel or the circle. I interpret them the same, but it's shown just in case you see some difference, or we learn there is a difference between them. But again, there are two golden mean midpoints between any two planets, and this wheel versus circle sort of glyph helps distinguish which one it is, even though right now I don't really care which one it is, because I interpret them the same. I interpret them as a smooth, natural flow of energy that the person kind of takes for granted, just like breathing or their heart beating. Let's see if I have anything else. I think that's about it for this video. We're at 36 minutes. I've already mentioned this. The person expresses the golden mean midpoint structure in a way that is natural and easy. There is an instinctive talent for expressing the energy, but the person may channel the energies in a constructive and positive way or in a destructive and negative way. I've already emphasized that. The person may not be motivated to pursue the path symbolized by the planets in the golden mean midpoint structure, but rather more often uses the facility given by the golden mean midpoint structure in some other area of interest. So they use this capability, not necessarily, it's an asset, but not usually directly. The golden mean midpoint structure indicates a way of being and a way of thinking, but not necessarily an area that the person is motivated to master. For example, Sun at the golden mean midpoint of Mars Uranus. See how we read this? Sun, GM, means Sun at the golden mean of the Mars Uranus midpoint, / means midpoint, inclines to having the ability for sudden, strong, and direct action, but not necessarily martial arts or even sports. The golden mean midpoint structure is deeply ingrained in the person and typically utilized in whatever interest and pursuits the person has. So I've explained to you what the golden mean is, how we use the golden mean, and I'm already giving you some ideas on how we interpret it. And to summarize, we have two ways we use the golden mean aspects, golden mean midpoint structures. There are two ways to do orbs, as proportion or as the usual way of a set degree. I'm recommending proportion and usually just 1% as your setting. There are two golden mean midpoint structures for any planets. We sometimes call these the GM3 and GM6, which means the 0.382 from the first planet or the 0.618 from the first planet. If you want to distinguish them, you can call them the GM3 and the GM6. And these are near golden mean midpoints. There's also two far golden mean midpoints, and research so far suggests that the near golden mean midpoints are important. We haven't done enough research on the far golden mean midpoints to determine if they are also important. And we've got some ideas on how to interpret them. So that's it for the first video, my friends. We've covered a lot of material. We're at 38.5 minutes. This is going to be 39 to 40 minutes long. So I've given you a lot of information. If that was too much to absorb at one time, you can listen to this again. In the next video, we're going to describe the results of some of the research on golden mean midpoint structures. In the third video, we're going to start learning more about the 4 planet patterns, which I've already started to introduce you to. This golden mean midpoint structure stuff is amazing, as we're going to see in the following videos. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate if you subscribe or if you like the videos. That helps us. And we are using the Sirius software in this, which is made by Cosmic Pattern Software, and their website for Cosmic Pattern Software is astrosoftware.com. Thank you very much, my friends. God bless. Namaste.